Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, dear Bernard, thank you for this invitation and thank you for the opportunity given to me to speak to you about what we are doing in Europe in the face of two types of threats regarding our security and safety. Well, the terrorist threat on the one hand and the cyber threat on the other hand. First of all, the terrorist threat, which remains at a way too high level and constantly evolving. We have moved from a coordinated state through groups of terrorists, such as in Paris in 2015 and Brussels 2016, to individuals who are isolated, very often radicalized, who use very simple systems such as knives and cars. This kind of attack is far more difficult to detect because individuals sometimes are unknown and move to action in an unpredictable way. In addition, and increasingly, we are also facing, likewise, cyber threats. 2017 was a year when we became aware in regard to cybersecurity with attacks which were unheard of and which have the ability to mushroom in a very quick manner and go beyond borders very easily. We also became aware of risks coming from numerous already connected things and the 50 billion that of connected objects by 2020. Most companies are hit by cyber attacks. According to the cybersecurity barometer of companies in January, 79% of companies noticed at least one cyber attack during the 12 last month. The ransomware, asking for ransom, remains the favorite cyber attack, and this kind of attack has increased by 300% since 2015. So in one of two cases, these attacks have a concrete impact on these companies and availability of the website, stopping their production or loss of data. According to the World Alliance survey, the risk related to hacking and loss of data comes ahead of natural disasters. With regard to companies finance, they are now number one in front of regulatory risks or changes in the market. Now, the economic impact of cyber crime has risen by fivefold and could be multiplied again by 4 by 2019. Following the WannaCry and other attacks, it was felt that a new cyber attack that would be very powerful could cost more than 100 billion euros to the global economy, and the economic knock-on effects had already been assessed at over 1 billion euros, and ISO estimates that we're far loftier than that.
Security is actually under the responsibility of member states, and states first and foremost, but the transnational nature of those threats that I just described and which really weigh on us require a very strong and robust answer on the European level. The work which we are conducting and the Commission aims at providing member states some support and the necessary tools so as to strengthen our fight against terrorism, organized crime, and cyber threats. Now, in the first time, our actions, I would like to talk about the actions related to terrorist threats. In the last few years, France, as well as quite a number of other member states, Germany, Sweden, Finland, Belgium, Spain, have been targeted by terrorist attacks that caused hundreds of deaths and casualties. We responded. Europe has responded in the face of terrorist threats. Member states have strengthened their cooperation through the work that we are conducting with a security union, and major headway were made to reduce the space in which terrorists may operate and strengthen our collective resilience and respond to the deep roots and radical religious figures within communities and online radical sentiments, so as to reduce terrorist actions. And well, we strengthened European legislation to really make terrorists' lives more difficult when trying to have access to weapons, explosive devices, and implementing their actions. The firearms. The directive was adopted last year. We're talking about the most dangerous firearms which civilians have no access to. We wanted to review explosive precursor regulations so as to strengthen the existing rules, so as to prevent the use of chemical substances for the production of bombs, and so as to battle the financing schemes and organized crimes inherent to terrorism. We wanted to set up a mechanism so as to have access to financial information, and we also wanted to limit the terrorists' traveling possibilities and their entry into the European continent with a setup since April 2017 of systematic control procedures through databases. And we're talking about people getting into or leaving the Schengen space. We would like to strengthen the control procedure in our control borders with a setup of new databases, the entry and exit database, which will make it possible to register all the entrants and people leaving the space. I mean, this is an ETIAS database or file, which enables us to really control or anticipate control procedures. And we also adopted the European PNR so as to be able to identify or the dangerous figures trying to fly over to Europe. We also were able to set up the first mechanism for the setup of security guards overlooking the borders. It is now made of 1,700 people and will be fleshed out, and we will have 10,000 offices by the year 2020. With this information terminal at the right time. Now, this is a very important parameter, very instrumental when it comes to fight against organized crime and terrorism. The Schengen information system was hence strengthened, and today it is now fueled and used a lot more efficiently by member states. But our information systems had loopholes in the past. The Berlin database and other databases were actually using different IDs in different European databases. And for this no longer to be possible in the future, we are going to be connecting all those migratory and security databases more effectively on a European level. If our collective effort is to avoid terrorist attacks, well, we should also shoulder member states as to strengthen their ability to respond or battle attacks or respond to those attacks when they happen. In the fall 2017, a national plan was published so as to sustain the protection of public spaces. The Commission also set up possible financing schemes enabling cities to carry out the right actions so as to protect public spaces without denying them of their open characteristics. We called for 100 million euros, but threats evolve, and we need to acclimate ourselves to those threats. The authors of the most recent attacks are European citizens that were brought up in Europe and never actually lived in a combat zone and probably got radicalized without even moving from their places of abode. We need to prevent the radicalization of those people, and so to reach this objective, we are battling in two fronts by sustaining local efforts in neighborhoods and by acting on online terrorism. For example, a field approach is essential, quite instrumental in Europe, and the Commission is supporting the work carried out by the Radical European Awareness Network with 3,000 experts. And those experts work on the field and are working on the prevention, radicalization prevention, and support national authorities. Another major challenge is about the radicalization through the internet tools. So as to battle online terrorist propaganda. Online terrorism has played an important role in each one of the attacks perpetrated in the European continent in the last 2 years. This is to, they encouraged attacks, they gave out orders accordingly, and also glorified the impacts of those attacks. Since 2015, we have been setting up a voluntary cooperation approach with the major internet platforms in the European Forum, in the Internet European Forum, but we haven't made enough headway in this respect. And that's the reason why we proposed in September last a legislation for the withdrawal of terrorist content on internet platforms after notification by police orders or judicial authorities. And to me, this is something which we need to do.
The challenge of cyber threats and what we've done to address that challenge and increase our collective resilience. To combat classic cyber attacks, which target systems and data or seek to cause major damage to the European economy, such as WannaCry and NotPetya that we've already mentioned, the Commission proposed a package of proposals in September 2017 to strengthen our resilience, to build effective deterrence, and help deliver credible cyber defense and international cooperation. We're in the process of strengthening the mandate of the existing EU agency that deals with these issues, the Network and Information Security Agency, to transform it into a genuine European cybersecurity agency. This new agency will be responsible for establishing and running an EU-wide cybersecurity standards and certification network to ensure that products and services meet the highest standards of cybersecurity and to foster trust in our digital infrastructures and systems. But we also need to reinforce deterrence and create real and credible disincentives for those who might contemplate attacks against us. Put simply, that means dramatically increasing the chances of getting caught and attaching severe penalties to committing hostile cyber acts. To facilitate the investigation and prosecution of cybercrime, we brought forward measures to make it easier for law enforcement and the judiciary to access financial information, as well as electronic evidence, such as information about emails, WhatsApp communications, or purchases on Amazon. We've also made proposals to boost our capacity to prosecute and sanction non-cash payment fraud, increasingly a digital crime. Card fraud in the Eurozone alone amounts to some €1.5 billion. 2/3 of that occurs where the card is not present, typically where details are skimmed or phished online, sold on the darknet. At the same time, we also need to have the right technological capacities in Europe, which is why we've substantially strengthened the overall budget for cyber in our proposal for the next EU budget period, starting in 2021. Through our Digital Europe programme, we proposed to fund €2 billion worth of investment in safeguarding the EU's digital economy, society and democracies through boosting cyber defence and the EU's cybersecurity industry, financing state-of-the-art cybersecurity equipment and infrastructure, as well as supporting the development of the necessary skills and knowledge. And that comes on top of funding from the Security Fund and from the research programme. We propose to create a network of national centres and a European hub to drive our cybersecurity research, to make it as coordinated and effective as possible. Rules already existing across the EU will play an important role. The rules set out in the new EU General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, including potentially significant fines for breaches, reflect the seriousness with which EU citizens treat their personal privacy and offer a powerful incentive for businesses to act accordingly. The new EU network and information security laws will also oblige governments to ensure that critical infrastructure is protected from electronic attacks. So major sectors like banking, transport, energy will have to assess and take action against cyber risk. Ideally, others should too. I think that the public sector needs to be taking the same approach. But building effective and sustainable cybersecurity can't just be left to public authorities, either at the EU level or national governments. The private sector needs to play its vital role. To help assure our collective cybersecurity, industry needs to make a switch from being sometimes a security consumer to a security provider, and from seeing security not as a cost, but as a competitive advantage. And, as you here are very well aware, the private sector has plenty of reasons to take these security challenges seriously. Cyber resilience will become part of what customers, consumers value in a brand. Companies with lax standards are going to risk already serious reputational damage. Corporate governance is starting to provide a push. Recent incidents at Equifax, Uber, and others caused public and political outcries aimed at the board level. Meanwhile, cyber insurance, the market whose value in Europe is likely to treble to 9 billion euros by 2020, will start to enforce its own discipline, rewarding those who take the right precautions. But we're not there yet. For example, according to a recent report by Lloyd's of London, European companies have a cyber insurance coverage rate lower than that in other developed nations. A serious problem when you consider the cost of such attacks, which Lloyd's estimates at being between $445 and $608 billion globally in 2017 alone. For that reason, I very much welcome the work that you're doing, that the association is doing in this area, including as part of a public-private partnership to create a national system of assistance for cyber attack victims, in standard setting and certification, and in prevention and awareness raising. It's vital that we press ahead with our efforts in both the public and private sectors to ensure we're properly prepared when and not if the next big cyber attack comes. A little bit later on this afternoon, my colleague, Commissioner Vella, is going to be talking to you by video on some other challenges, the challenges of protecting our climate, and in particular, our oceans, something that he holds very dear. And he also will point to examples of public and private cooperation, including with your sector. For example, the work that AXA has been doing to combat illegal fishing. I think these examples where we work together are very powerful. The world in which we live is a changing and challenging place. Our ever greater interconnectedness, which brings huge benefits to all of us, economic and social, also, when misused or abused, brings great risks and potential harms. One of the harms that we've been focusing on recently is the risk to our democratic processes, our democratic institutions, and our elections through the abuse of the internet and social media platforms. You can help. Your industry can help us to incentivize change. You can help us to incentivize preparedness and resilience. Those are shared objectives of national authorities, of public authorities at the European level, and of you, and I'm very happy that we're going to be able to work on them together. Thank you. Thanks for your attention.